I'm here with David Berger, and we are continuing the series where I've invited him to share some of his adventures, misadventures, and travel wisdom from his global meanders. You can read his blog at davidberger.net, and I will have a link to his YouTube channel in the comments below.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the introduction, Alex. Today I wanted to share with you a very humbling moment from some of my early travels. In 2009, as President Obama was taking office, we, and by we I mean the royal we, I landed in Milan. And I started an internship for 4 months. I had an extension with the U.S. Consulate General in Milan. And then I took 4 months to solo backpack and hitchhike and bus and train and hike and travel across Eastern Europe. So I came across Italy, and the folks joined up with me for a couple of weeks, and then headed down into Croatia and through Albania and Montenegro, and then through Macedonia and northern Greece, through Thrace, and got to see Meteora, which is an unbelievable monastery and series of sites that's just stunning. Then through Turkey, and then back up through Eastern Europe, which is Bulgaria, Romania, Slovenia, then moving north and got into the Czech Republic, and then found my way into Poland. And in Poland is where this story takes place. So I had found my way into Poland, and I was starting to get a little road weary. I had taken to spending a couple of days in a city and then hopping on a night bus instead of paying for a final hotel and wasting my time on the bus, and sleeping on the night bus and then waking up and exploring the next city. And I got to Poland, got on the train system there and the bus system, got to explore some of the concentration camps, got to see a lot of the history of Warsaw and Krakow. And our family has some history in the northeastern part of Poland near Augustów, towards the small town of Lipsk. And so I decided that I needed to go and visit this town where our family had been on my father's side in the early and mid-1800s, and see if there were any of the Jewish tombstones, or see if any of the old graveyards existed that would have our family names on it. And so I left Krakow, and I got on the train, and I had a little bit of trouble with the train police. I had an ISIC card, an International Student Identification Card, because I was still studying at Arizona State University at the time, and I was doing independent research for them. And that had entitled me to a student ticket. And so the government ticket office had issued me a student ticket with no problem using my ISIC card. And the train conductor decided that he wasn't going to honor that ticket. And so we had a little bit of a friendly argument that involved eventually some riot police, which turned out to be not quite as friendly as I thought it was going to be.
Now, to be fair, the riot police were there because you simply refused to pay the bribe, not because you had thrown the police officer off of a train or something like that.
Right. So basically what it had come down to is in the car he had demanded that I pay him, without receipt, the difference in fare plus a fine, and I had refused. I had a legitimately issued student ticket with a student identification card that was issued by their offices, and I wasn't going to pay the bribe. So that all worked out well, but I was a little bit on my guard, and I wasn't thinking clearly. I had a hotel in mind where I was going to stay in Augustów.
But wait, so going back to that, how did you actually get out of that? Because right now you basically left us on the platform with riot police showing up.
Right. Well, I was friendly with the riot police, and I continued to refuse, and then I remember just being like, no, I'm not going to pay, and walking away. Being polite but firm and refusing to pay the bribe. And then just saying no and walking away.
But did you invoke the U.S. Embassy or consulate or government support or something like that, or you just said literally no, I'm really not going to pay this?
You know, honestly, I can't remember that clearly. I remember parts of the conversation and refusing to pay, and recognizing and clearly stating that it was a bribe and that I would not pay without receipt. But I don't fully remember which arguments I used. I might have invoked my time at the U.S. consulate and said, you know, fine, call the embassy, and that might have helped back them down, but I can't remember.
All right, so so then you continued on and weren't in shackles.
Right? Yeah, I got out of it. You know, and I hadn't done anything illegal or wrong except for refuse to pay a bribe. But so I was a little bit off. So I got on another train with a properly purchased ticket, according to the conductor, which means that I didn't buy a student discount because I didn't want to deal with that again. And rode the train, and I wasn't in the right state of mind because I got dropped off at 10 o'clock at night, about, I don't know, 4 miles outside of town at this small rural side of the road train station where everything was locked, everything was closed. There weren't any signs, there weren't any lights. I thought I was going to be dropped off at a train station in town, and here I am, you know, miles outside of town. And I decide, okay, well, I've got to choose one way or the other, one direction or the other. And so I made a guess about which way to go on the road and started hiking in. And I got into this little Polish town. And I go to the hotel where I thought I would be able to get a room. And they said, oh, no, we've given away the rooms. There's no rooms left. You know, and this is a lot of conversation back and forth. Their English wasn't very good, and I don't speak any Polish. And I said, okay, well, is there anywhere else? And they're like, no, we're the only hotel. And I'm shocked for a few moments, and I'm like, well, okay, is there anywhere for me to sleep? And they're like, no, there's no pensions, there's no hotels, there's nowhere. And I'm like, well, okay, can I sleep in the bar? Like, when you guys close at 2 o'clock this morning in a couple of hours, can I just sleep down here and I'll pay for a room? And they said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. So they kicked me out. Politely. I mean, there was no force used, but they were like, no, you can't stay here. You can't stay here, and forced me out. And so I'm standing on the square of this tiny little town, you know, and there's no other hotels. Nothing else has lights on except for the bank. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what am I going to do? What's going to happen here? Like, I'm kind of up a creek without a paddle. I've got nowhere to sleep. It's going to be freezing cold in a couple of, you know, hours. And I'm like, okay, well, I will try and sleep in a park, in the Central Park. So I go straight across from the hotel where I can still look in the lobby, and I sit down on the park bench, and I've got a hoodie, and I pull a hoodie up over my face and my jacket around me, and then I strap my backpacks, one on the front and one on the back, and tie them together. And I lay down on this bench trying to keep in the warmth, and I'm freezing. You know, it's like probably 30 degrees, freezing outside.
What time of year is this?
Oh, this would be end of May. And it's just ice cold. Ice cold. And I'm like, I can't sleep out here. Like, I'm freezing. Like, I can't get warm enough. So I think to myself, okay, well, I can keep walking around the square and try and keep myself warm enough, or I can find somewhere to sleep. So I go rooting around, and as I'd mentioned, the bank had caught my eye because the bank had its lights on for the ATM, and the ATM was indoors, which was fantastic. So I open up the ATM door, and inside is another man who is curled up and sleeping next to the ATM. And I look at him, and he looks at me with my backpack strapped on and shivering with my coat up over and, like, you know, huddled to myself. And we look at each other for a moment, and he says something in Polish, and I have no idea what he says. And I say something back in English. I'm like, you know, good evening, like, do you mind? And gesture. And he doesn't speak English, apparently. He says something again in Polish. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I go over onto the other side of the ATM in this little enclosed shack, ATM shed, and curl up next to the ATM with my bag strapped to me and tied to me, and slept through the night. And then got up probably around 6:30 in the morning, as soon as it was light, and got on a bus out to Lipsk.
That is a hell of an adventure. I'm glad that my wandering, getting dropped off late at night in southern Italy ended with a friendly old grandma in a hotel room.
Yeah.
Not an ATM, an ATM room. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. Well, it was also very humbling. You know, it taught me a lot of lessons. One, about myself, not to make decisions about travel when I'm flustered. Two, you know, when I opened that door and saw that man who was also using the warmth and the shelter of that ATM, you know, it's like you have a lot of preconceptions about the homeless. And in Italy especially, and moving through Eastern Europe, there's a lot of distrust and a lot of, not necessarily outright racism, but a lot of nasty feelings towards the Roma people and towards the homeless or gypsies or anyone who's not necessarily well-to-do, but anyone who's homeless or who doesn't have a place in society. And unfortunately, when you're traveling and you're exposed to that for months on end, and it's in your conversations daily almost, you start to absorb a little bit of that feeling. And it wasn't until that moment when I opened those doors that I was struck by, you know, how can I have this prejudice? Here I am in the same situation where I need a warm place to stay, and here's this guy who could be dangerous, but it doesn't seem like it. You know, he's just trying to get warm, and I'm just trying to get warm, and, you know, I'm going to be able to sleep in here and share this space with him. And, you know, it melts away that kind of creeping nastiness. And it's a great reminder to refresh your mind and to make sure that you're not too influenced by kind of the socio-political sway of the areas you've been traveling through.
Oh, that's incredible. For more stories and videos like this, check out davidberger.net and keep an eye peeled for more videos. I'm going to continue to pick his brain on his travel adventures and misadventures. Thank you for watching. Thank you for likes, subscribing, all the usual stuff. Open roads, safe travels.